Welcome back to another fantastic episode of I'm going to talk and you're going to listen. The freezing has lifted and the dryness has been replaced with rain, and it's a rainy rainforest outside instead of a frigid, cold, foggy forest where it just seems like a server can't render the details very well. Oh, I already forgot the most important part. Thank you to my regulars, CDK, and Piers, and Jimmy, and Boo, and Birio, and Tuck, and I saw Eastbrew 2, aka Gaius, in here somewhere. And our furthest person from the Great White Moose infested north is our most recent commenter, CDK. Thank you. Check him out. Great music. So where were we? Talking about the Great Marshy Marsh. I was debating whether or not I wanted to put more like tactics, training, education stuff like directly into my podcast, or if I just wanted to keep them separate. But then it might be easier to just keep them separate and then gauge how they do. And then I'm like, well, how polished do I want these to be? How do I want to do a debut for them? What time of the day? And I'm like, that's just so much effort. And that's the hard part, is like, I was talking to another kind of newer creator about this. Don't put so much effort into your stuff. Like, I want to say, like, as a creator, one of the biggest fallacies somehow is that putting more effort into your work somehow equals better something. Like that's not the case. Like, YouTube itself, the YouTube mothership, does not care about quality at all. It only cares about volume and retention. So having fancy intros and fancy transitions and stuff is cool if you have a staff, if you have a team, but it's never something that you should just inspire for. It ends up, in the grand scheme of things, being, how do I say this, being the sum of all the parts, and just making like slow, methodical improvements. But going to like one video every 2 weeks or one video a month, but having higher production quality, unless the content itself really demands higher production value. Like if you're doing an interview and you're in a studio with somebody, that's going to require like massive amounts of like production value, because that's an actual production. But if you're talking to a camera, just be yourself and just not have shitty quality. That's it. You're not making a movie. Chances are nobody's going to see it until you've done 1,000 videos. So anyway, I digress. None of you are probably here to listen to about that. That's not even me being critical of anybody. That's just like them's just the rules. I don't make them up. I mean, within that 1,000, you might luck out if you're really experimental, or happen to hit on like a really specific grift. Like, I met a lot of new YouTubers through them talking about AI at like exactly the right time. And then I met a lot of YouTubers, them talking about unemployment at exactly the right time. That had nothing to do with the quality of their content or their transitions or anything. It helped that they had good audio and video, because that sucks to not have good audio and video. And unfortunately, with GoPros and DJI makes some good stuff. Like, unfortunately, that's created kind of like a crazy moat, kind of. But people are just buying a new iPhone and throwing their new iPhone up there and doing just fine. So my criticism's rarely on quality. It's usually, your voice puts me to sleep. So nothing I can do about that. And again, I'll remind everybody, this is like crappy $35 China copy, no name, little diddly do. So, blah blah blah. My last video was on L-shaped ambushes. I kind of I thought that maybe that's like a good entry point because a lot of people don't talk about ambush, counter ambush, and I was trying to think of if I was going to cover civil unrest in its like entirety, what is probably the most likely thing that's going to happen? And it's probably going to be you running into some kind of checkpoint or street shut or street lockdown or a construction zone or something like streets getting shut down, especially if you're in the cities, streets getting shut down from protests when things are going to happen. You eventually, if you're in the city a lot, you get so used to streets shutting down from protests and marches and signs and people and street lockdown, people, you know, doing donuts in the road and street races. You get so used to it and just just total lawlessness. You become completely immune to like just abject total lawlessness that like it becomes a liability for people that don't go to the city that often or boomers that just think they're entitled and they want to just drive right through what are very clearly checkpoints designed for people to not drive through. And the counter ambush elements are usually nestled in there, and entitled individuals or people that are just so tied to their routine that they refuse to acknowledge the roadblock in front of them get in huge trouble, and they get unalived. And the same thing happened in the Carolinas recently with roads washing out. People who are just too entitled or too used to driving down a road 10 billion times were driving right into ditches. Their brain was like superimposing a completed road in front of them, and their brain could not reconcile that the road was not there. This happens in traffic all the time. People just don't stop. They just plow into stopped traffic at 70 miles an hour. Their brain doesn't recognize like the relative distance of anything that's happened, and they refuse to accept reality, and their reality distortion bubble stops working, and they have some really tough explanations to do to people at the pearly gates as to why they're being fucking stupid. So, um, I personally have ran into these before. Well, not ran into them or ran through them. I have been stopped at intersections before, and unfortunately, maybe like several of the times that I have been stopped, I was not the person driving, and you have to be able to give clear, concise instructions and be able to figure out what's going on from the passenger side. And one of the times we were able to reverse out. Um, Two guys had stopped us in like a construction area, and instead of them backing out, they both got out of their vehicles, which is means it's go time, 100%. There's no way to misconstrue that, and we got reversed out. Thankfully, there was nobody behind us. I don't know what on earth they were thinking. That was insane. Um, and then the second time, there was a bunch of people illegally riding, a bunch of kids illegally riding mopeds, which is extremely common. And the moped, they managed to get a moped wedged under a car. Um, Thankfully, I think that it wasn't their intent to stop us, but they did because there was a moped wedged under our car, and so you still kind of got to do the same thing, like don't open your car doors, don't unlock your car, don't roll down your windows, you know, make sure nobody's under there, make sure no mopeds under there, and they grabbed their mopeds and they got away. Um, those are the two times where I wasn't driving. Uh, Certainly, I have driven to many, many, many roadblocks and homeless, you name it. Like it just be in construction where there was like no construction warnings, and all of a sudden there's just construction people in the road. And any of those things can be potentially ambushes. Like you don't know, so you just have to treat them all as if you're about to get ambushed because people. I don't know if to let me know down in the comments if this has ever happened to you when you've been stopped at a red light and all of a sudden someone tries your car door. That's happened before because in the dark you can't see, or if you've been at a drive-through. Have you ever been at a drive-through and somebody's tried your car door before? Oh yeah, oh yeah. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, you might think it's never gonna happen to you, but it probably has happened to you, and you just haven't realized it. And when I wake up early, like I forget, not everybody has cars that automatically lock their car doors once you're in and going. And a lot of cars have that safety feature now, but I can't tell you how many times I've almost got to work and was like, "Oh, great, my car doors have been unlocked this entire time." So, and for you Canadians, that means that a moose could have got in. But for the rest of us, it usually means someone's getting in that you're not going to be able to get back out again. And if you're not used to it through like repetition over and over again, you're just flat out not going to be ready. Your whatever your base programming is probably not going to get you through a roadblock. It's probably not going to get you through an ambush. Chances are you're going to do something that just leads you further into the ambush because your brain's not telling you I'm being ambushed right now or I'm about to be getting ambushed. Just like when you're walking through a parking lot, someone distracts you and you don't see the person coming from the other side. Your brain's not telling you I'm about to get ambushed in a parking lot or I'm about to get ambushed at the Taco Bell. But that shit happens like every day and every night, and nobody is talking about it. It's been going on for a long time. So during protests, most of the time, the protesters are trying to get from point A to point B as like high speed, low drag as possible. And they usually have people that are trying to watch out in their own groups to make sure that nobody veers off course. Usually because they don't want to split the protest, because there's inherent issues with splitting a protest up. Um, I would say, on average, most protests plan on being peaceful, especially if they're daytime protests. They plan on being peaceful. Um, they are, I would say, 9 times out of 10, more worried about elements inside their own group disrupting them than they are being disrupted by other elements. Usually, I can't say that so much against pro-Palestinian protesters because obviously Hebrew pro staunchly pro-Israel supporters are extremely vocal, and that's a whole deal. But I would say that's unique. That would be like if there's pro-Turkish protesters and pro-Kurdish protesters. That's a very those are very different dynamics than like your average hokey dokey protest going on. Um, and I will say a lot of pro Palestine protests have a lot of grifters in their ranks that are like Palestine apologists on the Israeli side, which creates an even more of a chaotic mess. And there's a lot of psychology. There's a lot of psychology there, and I can't. It's kind of out of scope of why protesters have apologists in their own ranks, but it gives them a lot of plausible deniability for what they do. It gives them more like counter credibility, which is really bizarre, but they think they want that sometimes. Usually do that inclusivity and apologists. Anyway, so and I would say so by and large, it doesn't really matter why they're protesting. You treat them all the same as if there's bad elements. And one of the things I didn't bring up in that video is that street lockdown security for ambush counter ambush is very similar to protests. In fact, a lot of times gangs have infiltrated protests and marches. I've seen this so many times. And a lot of times they have like they've hired gangs for security, or the gangs just are so strong that they say they're going to take over, and the protest doesn't have strong enough internal systems in place to be able to repel a gang if the gang says they're going to take the protest over, or protest security over. And I guess just imagine being at a protest for the thing that you like, and all of a sudden there being a full blown gang on the outskirts. I've seen it so many times. It is wild. You're like, oh, there's an actual gang here, and the gangs, at least they used to, love to come to the protests because it was something to do. It was something going on, and I don't know if they use that to test and train and practice, or if it was just some fafoing on their part. But the thing is, gangs aren't any better equipped to handle their adrenaline most of the time than anybody else, because they just want to fight. They're just looking for a fight. And it's the same in Seattle, it's the same in Portland. They have lots of guns, they don't care, they have no fear of jails. They don't fear each other, they certainly don't fear the protesters, they don't fear the cops at all. They really don't fear anybody. And so I guess maybe that segues maybe to part two of this, which I've talked about this before, but the jails, not only are the jails full or almost full in Multnomah County, but apparently now, as of at least a couple days ago, they're all also like dangerously understaffed. So they couldn't jail anybody even if they, let alone get any of the homeless and traffic people the help that they need. And what I didn't touch on as much as I wanted to is the cops are also really, really busy right now trying to make everyone feel safe to go Christmas shopping, because it's always a big push to make sure that Christmas doesn't get like crashed by people just like too scared to go out, because these businesses are already getting like looted monthly to the point to where nobody will insure them anymore. And the windows alone cost a fortune, but they're like, in a lot of cases, they're looting these places right after like their grand opening weekend. So they know a business is opening. They wait till they have their big burst of a 3-day weekend, and then they steal everything Sunday night. So the cities really count on Christmas to be able to recoup a lot of that money. And so the state and the city can get a lot of taxes back, and then hopefully they can pretend or maybe like fake it till they make it a little bit on commercial real estate. But the cops have to be around shopping areas to just try to make that happen. So what happens? Security in other areas falls apart. You might go, well, what are the consequences there? Well, for example, there was a gal who was trying to go to the bathroom in her house, and some guy was up in her window trying to film her go to the bathroom. She calls police, blah, blah, blah. I can see you, scares the guy off. Nothing happens, right? And you don't know if this is going to escalate, what kind of psychopath this guy is. And then so she installs a bunch of cameras. And guess what? The guy comes back trying to watch her go to the bathroom, and calls the police, blah, blah, blah. They've got film of this guy trying to do this, and just nothing happens. So what does that tell you? And if she tried to defend herself, she's going to be the one that gets in trouble, because, oh, I've heard it all. It's just insane, right? So like, women can't feel safe in their own home. They can't feel safe going anywhere. I think like driving fatalities are up like through the roof this year, because everyone has collectively lost their mind on how to drive. Every third car looks like it's half destroyed. It's just insane, and vehicle insurance is just going through the roof. Like, it's a really bad situation. But at the same time, and layoffs are going through the roof. Wells Fargo's laying off another like 1,000 people or something, on top of moving out of the city. So on top of all that, they're still trying to make everybody go to the office. Well, here's the problem with that. Like, federal leases like half their buildings. And if you go check federal job postings, they're still hiring remote. Like, the cities, like, forcing federal back to the city doesn't bring the city back. Because at this point, even if you did somehow invent a magical teleportation device that teleported them all back, they're going to be the only people left in the city. And again, they only control the little piece of property that they're on. So nobody can really go out and do anything realistically once Christmas is over. Anyway, once Christmas is over, the cops are going to pull back and it's just going to be a free-for-all again. And I think it's going to be split two ways. I think it's going to be a lot of anti-war stuff / pro-Palestine stuff. That's going to be part one. And I think part two, hashtag free penny, there was the jury deadlocked on his first of his two charges, and now so they're going with the judge did something that they're never supposed to do, and instead of declaring a mistrial, somehow they're retrying the whole entire thing on the second charge, which is insane to me. I guess like no lawyer has ever heard of this happening before, because you can't like be in trial for like two charges and then your first charge being thrown out and then them having like murder 1, murder 2, and they're like, all right, well, let's hear the whole thing over again with the same jurors on the second charge, which is basically a very slightly lesser charge than the first charge. It's like, no. If it's hung on the first one, it's going to be hung on the second one. They just wipe the whole thing and start over if they have to. You don't like hear the whole... I've never heard of this in my life. Nobody has. And so I think what's going to happen is if Penny gets let off, which he should, this whole thing should be wiped out. I mean, the perp was still alive when they got there, when the law enforcement and everybody got there. So he couldn't have killed him. He was still alive. That's nuts. I don't even know how murder could even be on the thing. Anyway, I think that the burning and looting crowd is going to be on the rampage if he gets out. Even if it ends up being a retrial, I think they're going to go and use this as their catalyst to go on the rampage, just like George Floyd and Trayvon Martin and every other time. This guy, even though he is like 30 felonies or 30, 40 felonies, he had like an open warrant or something. I don't know. Go look it up. It's insane. 34 felonies and open warrant. I don't know. They take the absolute like most garbage people and they put them up on this pedestal and then they use them as their martyrs. And you'll even hear them call them martyrs, and you're just like, what are you talking about? That's creepy. So I think you're going to have some kind of anti-war thing. You're going to have the free penny thing, and then lastly, and I stopped my last podcast like right before checking my Twitter and realizing that this had happened. But in New York, they're shutting off the free food and shelter for the illegals. And if Denver, if like Atlanta, if they all start doing that, and you might ask why, and I'll get to that in a second, you could be having tens of millions potentially of illegals going over food riots and shelter riots. That would be overwhelming if that happened. And I think you're going to end up with more and more and more climate migrants going to new sanctuary states, and I think they could completely overwhelm the Pacific Northwest, which I've talked about before. And I think what's going to happen is you're going to have these kind of like these giant three-way protests, and then that's how do you get... I think I proposed the question last time, like, where do you find a bunch of unemployed people to protest, right? And the answer is you've got 30 to 40 plus million illegals in the US that are now without free food, medical, health care, shelter, and unless they're going to staff up Homeland, which I think they are, but I don't think they're going to be staffing up Homeland fast enough. You're not going to be able to get them all out of sanctuary areas. You might be able to get them out of non-sanctuary areas using sheriffs and police and stuff, but you would have to send armies of federal agents, armies of federal agents to be able to get the illegals out of sanctuary areas. And all that would do is laser focus the resistance to go bolster up those areas, and you end up with a big old CW on your hands. You want to know how it happens? That's how it happens. And so you already have Elon Musk, the idiot, spreading. Oh, hold on, I took screenshots of some of these things so I could not get in trouble for libel or whatever it's called here. Okay, I don't know if Elon said this part, but I saw a lot of other people posting it. I assume they got it from him, or maybe Cat Turd, because a fucking idiot too. Whereas this only 6% of federal workers show up in person to work on a full-time basis. I saw people that should know way better posting that. I don't think that's true. Even if you don't even look at the semantics, because it's like, well, the USPS shows up to work there, and that's like a massive number, and they're part of the federal workforce. TSA is part of the federal workforce. They show up to the quote-unquote office every day. And I asked people, and nobody could tell me where this 6% came from. But I saw other people posting that it was as low as like 1%. And I'm just like, okay, you guys realize you're getting into like just absolute shit posting territory. Like there's no way that it's real. There's just no way. So I wish I could find who started that. I thought it was Musk, but I can't say that unless I know for sure. But it was right around the same time that he was posting, or maybe he was like quoting somebody else's. I feel like there's this one where I think he's pretty clever at retweeting other people's stuff sometimes. So there's this one where Representative Mike Collins, which one of the reps in Georgia, but he's like making fun of like Hillary walking into the kitchen, and he's like, federal employees walking into the office for the first time in years. And then Musk says, many don't even know where the office is. So what's what the fuck does that even mean? And he doesn't bother to explain. Is like, is he talking about people who were hired during the Rona because of the massive turnover that the whole country went through of hiring and firing and people moving and coming back and coming and going and switching to private and others switching to federal and back, and all the people that moved to halfway across the planet because they just got sick of bullshit here for either left or right reasons or whatever, or family. Many don't even know where the office is. Like, so everybody else that wasn't hired within that 2-year time span absolutely does know where their office is. That's fucking retarded. Unless he's talking about contractors, and I don't know, you can go look it up, but a massive amount of federal are still contractors. And so what this started giving me like serious like Rona vibes, like this vapid, toxic, we're just gonna tell people to go back to the office shit. Started reminding me a lot about the Rona, where they're like, we're just gonna make everybody take the vaccine, or they're just gonna lose their job. Except now it's like you're all gonna go back to the office or you're gonna lose your job. Or third-party contractors are going to lose their contracts if they don't do XYZ, or third-party contractors like my brother was maybe he could go to this site or couldn't go to that site based off if he was on this booster or that booster, or based off if he wore fucking one mask or two masks. Like this shit just gets so stupid, and many don't even know where the office is. They think that shit is so fucking funny, but watch like the legislature. Like how many when you watch like a hearing, how many of them are even there for their own different houses and committees and this and that, and how many of them are delegating and they're doing this and that. Like they don't even say who they're talking about, if they're talking about middle management or if they're talking about contractors or if they're talking. I don't even think, here's my point, I don't even think they know who the fuck they're talking about, and that's why this just comes off as idiotic shit posting. Because, like, let's not pretend that any of these fucking people that are shit posting on Twitter at all are in their office shit posting from Twitter. Obviously, they're not. But they're all shit posting from Twitter about how other people need to be in the office. And he kind of like, Musk never like just comes out and just says, this is bad or this is good. Like, Tommy Robinson's in jail for for the stupidest thing on the planet, and Musk will kind of like beat around the bush and like loosely talk about it, but he won't just say Tommy Robinson should be freed immediately, XYZ, and this is what I'm going to do about it, or Penny is in jail for something that didn't even happen, and this is what I'm going to do. Instead, he goes, the Joker is in charge, talking about DAs, and it's just it's so like shit posty. And then he'll be talking about Elden Ring. And what is irritating about that is that people take his shit posting to mean something tangible. And I thought I took way more screenshots than I did. But there will be other people that will just come out and say, like, we're firing 99% of the federal employees. And it's like, you're not though. You can privatize the TSA again, or figure out what you're going to do with the TSA. Like, I keep trying to run these numbers because just people saying stupid shit just pisses me off. So what do you do? Like, get rid of Social Security? I guess if you're going to get rid of Social Security, and if you're going to get rid of the IRS, and if you're going to get rid of Department of Education, but you can't. Like, you would have to somehow, you have to get like the House and the Senate to be able to like vote to like dissolve. Like, you can't like just dissolve the ATF or dissolve the IRS. Like, I don't think that, and I don't have my degree in politics. I had a friend who did, but we kind of drifted apart. And he knew, he went and got his actual degree and knew how it all worked. But all it did was just immediately disenfranchise him. Let me pause this again and see if I can find the other post I was looking for. Oh, here we go. I found his 1% tweet. It was back on December 5th. He said, if you exclude security guards and maintenance personnel, the number of government workers who show up in person and do 40 hours of work a week is closer to 1%, almost no one. And that was in response to the New York Post saying only 6% of federal workers show up in person on a full-time basis. Scathing Senate report reveals. So let's open up this New York Post. Let's figure this out. Let's get to the bottom. Let's get to the bottom of this, because I don't believe it. Because the argument that I got into with somebody said, they're supposed to be doing outreach. If they're in one of the departments that's supposed to be doing outreach, then they need to be in the office. I'm like, but outreach doesn't mean being in the office. Outreach means being out of the office. And then they were like, and then someone else was like, but you need to have organic in the hallway conversations. I'm just like, but you don't. I actually don't want to have organic in the hallway conversations. I actually want to be left alone to do my fucking job. But anyway, we'll get to it. Let's see what the New York Post says. They are being remotely professional. Ha ha ha. A paltry 6% of the federal workforce. Notice it doesn't say federal employees versus federal contractors. It just says federal workforce, which to me already seems like this is extremely biased. Whether you're like public or private, uh, usually contractors just don't have to come in that much, and they haven't had to for a long time, public or private. And I tried to think back, and I haven't had to be full time in the office since like the middle 2000s. So and it was when I was a server administrator. And the funny thing is it turned out that they could actually do all the server stuff remote, but they couldn't. Obviously, you can't run the print center remote. So I would run the print center, and then my bosses sometimes would have to get up in the middle of the night and help me run the servers remote. So they didn't have robots to put new paper in the printers and change the ink and stuff. Anyway, so this whole, it's like people are just now realizing that work from home is a thing, and I brought that up, and they're like, well, it was never that low. It was that low. A lot of the traffic that you would see in the cities wasn't people going to the office. It was people going to college, because whenever school was out for break, all of a sudden, like, traffic would be way down because you weren't competing with all the college kids trying to get to school. Anyway, I guess, some of the banker towers and stuff, like, I never worked for any of the big banks, so I don't know if they had to go in. But I worked for all the big three as a contractor and never had to go in the office full time. The only people who did were the people that lived close enough to where it wasn't a really big deal. Plus, everybody takes time off and shit too. Like this whole 40-hour. Anyway, let's get into the article. A paltry 6% of the federal workforce report in person on a full-time basis, while almost 1/3 of federal workers are remote. It's probably higher than that because they've been hiring full remote for 4 fucking years now since the Rona. Again, you can go look it up on the job posting websites. In a sharp turnaround from the pre-pandemic era, which only 3% telework daily. I like I like how they switch from full-time. They switch from saying full-time basis to only 3% daily, as if there was no middle ground. That's obviously a fucking lie, or just heavily misconstruing the facts. Does that mean only 3% telework every day? Or does that mean only 3% were telework full time? Because you can't just like keep switching those numbers around. But let's see. Ernst, an R from Iowa, who has long crusaded against the rise in remote federal work, is planning to reveal the fruits of her office's 1.5-year inquiry to the DOGE co-heads, Musk and Ramaswamy, during their visit to the Capitol Thursday. The nation's capital. Oh, see, here we are. Here we're getting down to the brass tacks here. The nation's capital is a ghost town. You know what they're talking about? They're talking about DC. And I'm pretty sure this is what I said on my last podcast, that really they're bitching about DC. Now, if they can't recruit inside DC, what the fuck do you expect them to do? Unless you're going to make, and to be quite frank, this wouldn't be that big of a deal in my opinion, is if you're just going to create federal buildings all over the place and then just let every federal agency go to that, whatever federal building is closer to them, then you've got some IRS guy and some ATF gal sitting next to each other. Would that make them happy? Because DC is a fucking shithole. You can make them all go back, but there was like senators and shit that were getting like robbed in DC, and some of them had security escorts and they were still getting robbed. Their Secret Service getting robbed. There was FBI, like, everybody was getting robbed. To be clear, the same shit was happening, like, in Portland, too. Like, there'd be, like, cops or something waiting for their shift, and they would get robbed, waiting for their shift to start. Um, so, yeah, okay, the nation's capital is a ghost town. Oh, we're finally getting to the real problem here. Just dissolve DC. Doesn't that doesn't that just seem like a fucking way easier solution? Just dissolve DC. Why is the nation's capital being a ghost town anybody's problem that doesn't reside around DC? Just dissolve it. What the fuck does it do? Nobody knows. Nobody can tell you. So they say the nation's capital is a ghost town with government buildings averaging an occupancy rate of 12%. But they don't say if those are leased buildings or owned buildings, conveniently leaving out another piece of information. And Ernst wrote in the blistering report, if federal employees can't be found at their desks, exactly where are they? Oh, I don't know. They're probably out doing field work. I mean, do you expect everybody at the FBI to be at their desk? Do you expect everyone at the CIA to be at their desk? Does everyone at the DODE just hang out at their fucking desk all day? That just sounds stupid. It sounds like somebody's talking who doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about. Anyway, Musk took note of Ernst's report ahead of his meeting with lawmakers to brainstorm ways to rein in the federal bureaucracy. Well, okay, and I've seen that taken out of context a couple times too. You can rein in federal bureaucracy and not fire everybody who refuses to go back in the office or whatever bullshit it is that they're come back in or we'll fire you, but then they're saying they're going to be firing everybody anyway. So yeah, here's where we go. Oh no, that's funny. All this is wow, this is some like cyclical circle jerking here. The New York Post, who was quoted by Musk, quotes Musk in their post. The only way they could have done that is if they went back and edited the post later after he responded to their fucking post. That's weird. House Speaker, if you look at the timestamps, that's impossible. They couldn't have wrote this and then have him quoted this. So then anyway, House Speaker Mike Johnson, our law also highlighted the report's finding between meetings with Musk and Ramaswamy. This is absurdity. It's not something the American people will stand for. And so one of the first things that I think you'll see is a demand from the new administration, from all of us in Congress, that the federal workers return to the. I don't think Congress has been going in full time to do Congress stuff either. And like, not to be like really pedantic here, but like, how much was Orange Man really in the office? Weren't they saying that he was like golfing a lot? And doesn't he like fly around a lot? And Sleepy Joe was in his basement and then had like his little remote workstation that was just like behind a blue screen that they famously showed side photos of like his like fake desk in a different anyway. Like nobody goes to the fucking office is my point. The Iowa Republican in particular, oh yeah, here we go. The Iowa Republican in particular blasted President Biden's penchant for ditching the White House for his homes in Delaware or vacations with his rich donors. Well, yeah, Orange Man does that too, but whatever. President Biden is setting the example. He was out of office for 532 days over the last 3.5 years. About 40% of the time he is expected to be in the Oval Office. Yeah, but who gives a shit? To be clear, I don't actually care if the president's in the Oval Office at all. I just want them to be somewhere safe where they can run the country. If that's from Florida or a military base somewhere. Anyway, her office collaborated with the Open the Books, a nonprofit group that advocates for government transparency for taxpayers and claims the Biden administration redacted. Oh, what's this? Claims that the Biden administration redacted the work locations of over 281,000 rank and file federal employees. Probably because it would have been all of their home addresses. Since, unless it was just like private, if you weren't considered critical, whether you were private or public, you all got sent home. So, did they really want to dox 281,000 employees? That's still not contractors, though. Okay, so here we go. Leasing and maintenance costs for federal buildings, as well as the tab to keep them running, is about 15.7 billion annually. That's still nothing compared to how much we send to Ukraine, but whatever. Meanwhile, the government has ownership of about 7,697 vacant buildings. 2,265 of those are somewhat empty, costing about 15 million for leasing and maintenance of underutilized space. So those are the ownership of the vacant buildings. Those don't talk about leasing and maintenance. This is exactly what I'm talking about. It is impossible for me to take any of this shit seriously when they keep changing the definitions of what they're talking about. This is extremely misleading reporting. If they're talking about leasing and maintenance costs, leasing and maintenance costs for federal leasing, and then the next sentence is them complaining about ownership. Why don't you tell us about the leased buildings? Because I would think that the leased buildings would be a really easy solution. But guess what will happen? It'll crash the commercial real estate market. I don't think they want that to happen. I don't think anybody wants that to happen. And so, kind of my question, not that Musk would ever answer me, but my question to Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy and all these ding-dongs that think they're so fucking smart is, are they ready to crash the commercial real estate market? Hard. Because that is exactly what will happen. To be clear, I don't care. Let it all crash. End the cities. And anyone who is worried about 15-minute cities shouldn't be cheering on federal employees to have to go back, because as soon as someone has to go back, everyone has to go back. And you want 15-minute cities? Do you want to worry about walking through fentanyl clouds and passing out and just dying and your loved ones not knowing what happened to your body as it ends up in the river like months later? Like, is that the future that you want? The cities could stop functioning tomorrow and everyone stay at home and I'd be happy, as I think most people would, except for the people living in the cities. And those people could just find a new normal, I guess. The cities can survive and just figure out something else for commercial real estate to do, turn them into condos or something. Although I know there's a lot of fire code drama and earthquake code drama. But the bottom line is that, like, all these smart mouths that think they're so fucking smart, they won't just say the thing. They're all beating around the bush thinking they're being so cute and they're stirring shit up. But they come off as like really fucking stupid to anybody who actually looks at this stuff for 2 seconds. If you're gonna tell me, let's lease some new federal buildings and smoosh all the federal people together that aren't working near DC, close down all the leased buildings, consolidate all the owned buildings, like, you could have floating desks at those and not require everyone to come back 100%, or people who mostly work out in the field. If you want them to have a home office so bad, have like a real honest conversation about that and separate that from taxpayers getting ripped off and ending bureaucracy and all these things. All this, like, the Department of Government Efficiency isn't going to fucking do anything because they seem to be surrounded by people who don't really know what they're talking about and they don't really have an answer or a solution. And I would wager that they also don't have the backbone. I don't think they have the backbone to fire everybody, or even try to figure out how. I don't think they actually have the backbone to close any departments. I don't think they have the backbone to force everybody back to the office. And I don't think they have any backbone to, like, close down commercial real estate. I don't think they have the backbone to do anything. I think they're shitposting for a little while. and then they're just gonna quietly go into the sunset. Because I scroll through this, and the same guy, the same guy on December 5th at, I don't know what time this was, he says, this is Elon Musk. The New York Times is a woke warmonger propaganda barf. And then the same person is quoting the New York Times a couple hours later. All right, scrolling kind of, yeah, within like 3 posts, he goes from the New York Times is a woke warmonger propaganda to retweeting the New York Post. It's just, it's, if if you can't see that this is all just a giant troll, then you're just part of the ass of the joke. Because nowhere in here is it's like, this is how we're actually going to restore everybody's rights, or this is how we're going to actually abolish the ATF, or actually get, either abolish the IRS or get flat a flat tax structure. They don't even know how they would tax everybody on capital gains. They like to say it, tax the rich, even though they know that you really can't. This is all a giant troll, and they don't have any actual plan. I guess they think that it's funny to just scare the shit out of federal employees or something for like a month or two before they realize that like literally nothing's going to change because it's all the same people in charge. It's all the same people in charge. Nothing changes. Like, Vivek and Musk aren't actually a part of any government agency. They can't make anybody come back to the office. Just like they couldn't make anybody take the clot shot. And that's what like brought all of this back around to me, is that this is just trying to like force people to do shit for like an arbitrary reason. Um, do border patrol people go to the office? No, border patrol people do border patrol thing. I mean, they have like a logistics element, but like I've heard this shit like abolish the FBI. It's like, really? And then I hear no, just abolish the parts that are redundant with other agencies. And some of it's like, yeah, they don't all need a TAC team. I get it, but how is any of this supposed to work? They've been talking about this for what, a month now? 3 weeks? They've been talking about this for 3 or 4 weeks now. I don't even remember. November 6th, right? They've been talking about this for a month, and they still don't seem to know what they're talking about. That's why it just comes off as a troll to me. If they want everyone to go back to work in DC, then why don't they just say that? Everyone in DC, get back to work. If your job actually even has an office anywhere, but what are they going to do for people who don't have an office? And that's why that whole remark, like, some people probably don't even know where they're headquartered or where their office is or whatever. It's like, well, maybe people don't know where their cube is anymore because some fucker probably moved it in the last 3 years. But like, let's not pretend like a 2-second Google search isn't going to tell you where your office is. Like, in case you don't, that's just stupid. It's just, the whole thing, I think, is just like annoying because it detracts from the real things that need to be getting done, like actually abolishing the ATF, actually somehow restoring everybody's Second Amendment right, like actually abolishing like the IRS, like all the things that should be happening, but they're like, we're gonna fire everybody, but also everyone get back to the office. It just tells me that they don't know what they're doing. And I think what it really boils down to me is they think they're going to be laying everybody off, but by all accounts, I would not be the least bit surprised if the government ends up hiring even more people. I think to sum it all up, what I'll say is that um, instead of tracking the massive massive management bloat, and the fact that over a certain level, these levels that they have in Congress and Senate, House, everyone above that, um, look into the fact that they're all millionaires somehow, which should be mathematically completely impossible. Um, I think if they looked into that stuff, you know, that might be an interesting place to look. Just the massive management bloat might be a great place to look. Like, but they also need to understand, just like with private sector, um, retention's a huge problem. People in high demand, both private or public, have many other places that they can go. And even on the public side, and again, this is all open source information you can find on the job posting websites. I've looked because I like to do my research, and one agency could be paying a completely different salary than another agency, which doesn't make any sense. Like, why don't they look into that? Oh, I know. It's because they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Like, they don't go look and see why, like, the CIA and the FBI make different money. Even like an analyst in one doesn't make the same as the analyst in another. The Department of Agriculture is a different analyst. Why they're all different analyst pay grades than fucking DOD and Homeland. They don't. They're too stupid to know about shit like that because they're just shit posting. And the reason why I keep talking about this is I'm trying to draw Venn diagrams over what I think is really going on, because I think it's a little more than shit posting, but I also think they're fucking retards. So, um, I just I just so happened to see a post from Zero Hedge. If you've never checked them out, they're great. This one says it's authored by Fred Fleiss via American Greatness. So I think Zero Hedge reposted it. And it says top priority DOGE Commission decentralizing federal government. And I saw a couple Twitter posts revolving around this too, where some people are starting to come around and admit that almost all of the empty buildings that they're bitching about are all in DC. I will admit that. Like, I don't think anybody's denying that. The problem is they're talking about decentralizing the government, which I think for continuity purposes and is an amazing idea. Um, but why are these people so fucking stupid that they not know that there's already government buildings, at least and owned, strewn all across the US? It takes 2 seconds to figure that out. It's open source information. So why, instead of all the bluster and blunder and bullshit of them panicking everybody into a heart attack over saying only 6% of the federal government shows up to the office, which is not fucking true. It cannot mathematically be true. They say they're counting security guards. Well, those are contractors, so that doesn't fucking count. So are they talking about federal protective services? Because don't they sit in their cars all day? Like, are they even attached to an office? Are they talking about the USPS? Are they talking about Homeland, who sit in, like, their 4x4s and bumble around in the desert? Like, it infuriates me because it's so fucking stupid that I cannot believe that either they are just like everybody else and think people are too stupid that they're not going to look into this retarded 6% number that they pulled out of their ass. But like, then they start complaining about unions, and the left is some of the most pro-union fucking people on the planet, and conservatives are traditionally like more anti-union. They won't shut the fuck up about the government not needing a union, but the post office also has a union. So like, if they don't want them to have unions, like, They can't tell anybody what a single thing is that the unions have done. And then they go, well, we need to make it so everybody in the government is just terminatable and abolish the unions. It's like, okay, you make them all terminatable, fireable, whatever. Then what? Who would you put in charge? They have their cute little fucking Office Space meme. Who would you put in charge of of the wholesale firing of hundreds of thousands of people when these people have already shown they don't know what the fuck they're talking about? They don't know what they're doing. They're just shit posting. And I've seen this on the private side for a long time because I used to be in continual improvement on the private side for a long time. It takes years and running a lot of graphs and a lot of metrics to really find out where waste is. And the only answer to this that Musk had was, well, if you want to volunteer unpaid for 60 hours a week or whatever dumb shit he said to run metrics and graphs and try to figure out where the waste. Motherfucker, we already know where the waste is. Everybody already knows where the waste is. So how, start there. The only you would have to have a consulting agency in the FBI for years to narrow down exactly where the biggest bang for your buck is going to be if you're going to clean it out. Instead they don't have a plan. And you know how they don't have a plan? Because they go, well, we'll just troll them all, and then they'll all just quit, and we won't have to worry about it. I got news for you. If you've ever watched Obamagate, the FBI doesn't fuck around. The Fed boys don't fuck around. They don't go running with their tail behind their legs because they've all got 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years. They've been doing this their whole life. This is where it's one of the only careers left that hasn't been ran into the ground. And this is where their retirement is. It's what they've been doing forever, and it's the only thing they know. Do you really think that they're going to run away scared and hide? And I know people want to drain the swamp. I get it. But, here's where you've got to make up your mind. And I can't remember exactly what Orange Man said, but I'm pretty sure he wanted to move the FBI building. Building. So it's been updated. The question is, will Trump and Republicans quash the FBI headquarters move to Maryland and pivot to Virginia instead? So, okay, is that what it was? He was originally going to move it to Maryland, and now he's saying maybe Virginia. So this is on VirginiaMercury.com. I assume that's one of their local. So let's just read this together, because the more you look into this, the more interesting this all gets. So this says, the decade-long endeavor to move the FBI out of its crumbling headquarters in downtown D.C. and into a new facility outside the city could face roadblocks next year. President-elect Trump and some of his top allies in Congress have rebuked the federal agency that undertook the search for the new suburban location, ultimately deciding on Greenbelt, Maryland, over two other options. Once Trump is back in the Oval Office and the GOP controls both chambers of Congress, the funding stream for the GSA to build the new facility could end. So I guess they're saying by the time he gets in, that money won't exist anymore. That won't be earmarked anymore. So Republican lawmakers calls to require the GSA to restart the search process, changes the criteria for federal agency used to select the location, or simply tell the agency it must construct the new headquarters in a different location. Other options include Alabama, somewhere inside DC, or Springfield, Virginia, or Orlando, or Maryland. The other two locations. So they're trying to keep it on track so they don't lose the money, so they don't have to start all over again. $200 million is what it looked like, which is objectively nothing considering how much we give to Ukraine now and Israel. So I think I think they could move the FBI building, and I think the question is, as long as they don't move it too far, it probably isn't going to ruffle a lot of feathers. And that's the thing, like, if they smartly moved a couple and they did it slowly, and if they opened 2 facilities and then started slowly moving people over, that would probably be really good. That would probably work out really well and people wouldn't freak out. But the thing is that wouldn't meet their shit posting agenda of posting stupid shit to troll the liberal swamp. Like, they don't understand. You can't just, like, it's not like there's just giant empty federal buildings across the US that you can just move people to. And it costs a fortune to move people. Here's the thing, though. Some people are probably going to want to move. There's probably a lot of people that would love to get out of these. Like, so are you really, like, trolling the libs if some of them actually want to move? I mean, it's like people, like, the left wanted to move out of California, and the left wanted to move out of Portland, and now the left wants to move out of Seattle. You think they don't want to move out of DC too? Like, some of them are going to want to stay, but you're not going to be able to move the entire federal government out of DC. So it's the whole thing just it cracks me up and it frustrates me because I like the Gothic architecture as much as the next guy. I really do. When you need to go to, whichever office to do whatever business, they're always really easy to find, and I appreciate that. But, like, let's not pretend that this trolling is going to drain the swamp, or that this trolling is scaring anybody. I think you could centralize. I'm sorry. I think you could decentralize it without laying anybody off. You can just say, hey, if you're in this area, you now report to the closest building and here's your options. Like, keep it simple. Like, people who've been doing the same shit their whole life don't like their life upended. A lot of them, I'm sure, didn't like having to stay home for the Rona, but now, just like on the private side, when I finally got to telework, I'm like, oh, this is great. I don't have to waste hours of my day commuting anymore. And if the current place that I'm at didn't let me telework, I wouldn't have been able to move. The the average cost for where I moved from, the houses have jumped up between $500 and $600,000. I could not have lived there. Period. And people say, well, you could get a 1 bedroom apartment. Motherfucker, I've been working my entire life. I don't want to live in a 1 bedroom apartment. I don't want to live in a tent. I don't want to live in an RV. I wanted a family, but I guess I'm shit out of luck for that, So I want for my wife and I to have a house to live in. I got my degree. I've been working my whole life, and I was priced out of where I've grown up my whole life by a bunch of people who aren't even from here. And so, why not give people the options of moving a bunch of the 3 letters and saying, hey, maybe you could even, you're an analyst here, maybe you could go be an analyst there. Would maybe you've got family in, what are they saying, Maryland. Maybe you've got family in Virginia. This agency needs another analyst. Do you want to go there? Or, maybe there's something in Idaho. But here's the problem. That's not what they're saying. Instead, they're saying, troll, lol, troll, lol. We're gonna fire all of you. It's so stupid. We don't know what you're doing all day. LOL. Nobody knows what Musk is doing all day, besides his idiotic shit posts and then talking about video games, then launching a rocket again, and then Tesla, which I'm sure is just going to be a Nepo insanity with Fed vehicles with Tesla logos in 2 years. Mark my words. Um, like, so they want to force everyone to go back, but they say they're going to fire everybody. But there's no plan, And then I finally like this kind of like this twinkle of hope that maybe the plan is to decentralize DC for continuity purposes and to drain some of the swamp somehow. I truthfully don't think it is going to drain the swamp at all. Um, Maybe it'll get some folks to retire that were on the fence, but I mean, most of what I know about the government, I guess, is just from watching X-Files and the amazing Obamagate movie from Dean Cain and Christy Swanson. It's free on YouTube. Go check it out. And I've watched a lot of congressional hearings and stuff. Like the Congress and House and Senate and everything will all still be there. Just the rest of the three letters won't have as big of a presence there anymore. I don't think that's going to drain the swamp, because I don't think that the three-letter agencies, by and large, are the swamp. I think the swamp is House and Senate and Congress and all of the disgusting lobby and all of these non-state funded actors, all of them, whether they're registered or unregistered, and then sure, like the second tier from that would be any agencies that somehow can put in whatever those things are called. It isn't really a law, but they kind of quasi become a law. I can't think of the name of those right now. Like the Department of, well, the ATF obviously, the EPA, right? Like that, I would call that like tier two swamping, but like taking on he Orange Man didn't take on the swamp last time, and just this to me doesn't seem like taking on the swamp again. This seems like trolling a bunch of arguably annoying mid-level bureaucrats and then scaring the shit out of a bunch of people who, some of which probably aren't doing anything, but to be fair, when they're in the office they probably weren't doing anything anyway. I know on the private side, I used to I used to walk managers around and be like, you can hear the people not working, dude. Like, don't act like your staff are working. I can fucking hear them talking from my cube. I just leave them alone. Like, you know, some of them worked hard, some of them were fucking pieces of shit, and I'm sure it's the same way in the three letters. Making them go back to the office doesn't change that. And then you go, well, management can watch them now. It's like, maybe management's the problem. Maybe management's part of the problem. Like, maybe the upper mid-level bureaucrats are part of the problem. Maybe it's the 50 million different oversight functions and DEI functions that who knows what any of them do. Like, but you don't hear them talking about that because they don't fucking know, because they're idiots. And it just gets frustrating to me. They can point to like a few meme talking points and everyone claps like fucking harbor seals. And I don't see them being smart enough to know how to do this, because Musk is going to go back to playing video games and launching rockets, and Vivek is a chucklehead. So I guess it's frustrating to me, just like with the Second Amendment. I hope Massey put in a thing saying basically that there'd be like countrywide, concealed carry options. It's about time. But my question is, why can't federal just put forward and say everybody can carry everything? Like if you're a free person, why can't you just carry whatever you want? But concealed carry would be a good start. But you should be able to concealed carry everywhere. Everywhere. You are a free human being. You should be able to concealed carry everywhere. I remember somebody said, well, you should still have to go get training. I'm sorry, you can't expect grandma to go get training just because she wants a revolver in the house. You know, if grandma wants to carry her 38 onto a plane, maybe a discussion needs to happen. But like I don't but if grandma needs to defend herself and she's in the middle of nowhere, bringing her all the way to who the hell knows where to go get a class and then to send her all the way back again is not practical. Just like for the longest time, getting your FCC license for ham radios was completely not practical. If you lived out in the middle of nowhere, you had to go fuck knows how long all day to go pay your $35 to get your test. It wasn't until the Rona to where you could finally get your ham license online. I still think ham licenses are a good idea. Do I think they should be required in all instances? No. But you can cause some serious chaos with a ham radio. A ham radio is kind of like having for the First Amendment, it's like having a bomb, like a First Amendment bomb. Um, I don't think it should be mandatory, but like if you're going to broadcast on 50 watts or 100 watts or more than 100 watts, you're not. I've talked about this before. You're not a citizen radio operator anymore. You're effectively running like a mobile radio tower. And I think people need to understand that there's a big difference there. Kids playing on walkie-talkies is not the same as someone broadcasting, on 1,000 watts on a 200-foot tower. But that's the way the laws are written right now, kind of. So I don't agree. I think it's a little more complicated nuance than one side makes it, but I think it's not as crazy as the other side makes it. But the same thing with firearms. Like a modern pistol or a modern rifle are honestly relatively tame under the Second Amendment. If the ATF was amicable, they would just leave modern pistols and modern rifles alone and try to fight some other battle like rocket launchers and man pads and stingers and try to grenade launchers, try to choose their battles a little smarter. I think that modern rifles and modern pistols are super tame, just like I think a modern basic radio for the First Amendment is really tame. And I those are the things that I want this administration to spend their time on the next 4 years. Like if they want to decentralize DC, I think that's great. They just need to be smart about it. And unfortunately, they've had a month, and all I've seen is stupid shit come out of their mouths. And all I've seen is a whole army of idiots repeating the stupid shit they say, with probably like 1% of people responding with something actually intelligent. And I've been talking to those people, and they're all making perfect sense. But the other 99% are just parroting this idiocy. And then I hear people saying they want to lay off even more of USPS. I'm like, are you insane? Like, where do they think? Because I have talked to our local USPS people a lot, and they are running paper thin half the time. I don't even know what happened to our normal gal. But I know there's like probably 5 other people, and some of them are contractors trying to keep up with her routes because she was so fast and efficient. And they're doing Amazon's job now. I don't know how we get to a place where you lay off the amount of the post office that they want, unless you just fully automate metric shit tons of it, which you can, but guess what? That takes a lot of time and money. And you don't hear them talking about automation, you just hear about them laying people off. And if I was the post office, the only way I could really see that working is dividing deliveries. I said this a long time ago, but you need to like divide the deliveries in like 2-day batches, and then that way the post office wouldn't be working, in the middle of the night in pitch black freaking darkness. Um, and that insanity, which is super dangerous for them. And I think I was watching Everything USPS, and he had a guy on. He's like, nobody wants their mail delivered after dark. Like, that's just not good for anybody. And it's so true. It used to break my heart over Christmas when I saw USPS delivering at like 10 at night in like freezing cold temperatures, and I know that they're going to drive home and immediately have to start again the next morning. And I'm just like, that's the definition of insanity. Like, just save that shit and deliver it the next day and have it, kind of like a rotation. I don't know why they don't run like that. Maybe it's just not efficient for how they stack up their deliveries. But I just, when they say they want to fire 90% of the government or whatever, that just doesn't match up with the decentralizing. Because if they decentralize, which is the other part of what they say, they're going to have to just rehire them all anyway. So the fraud, waste, and abuse is only going to go away if the new people, which they think, oh, maybe if they're in more rural areas, maybe the new people won't abuse the system, or maybe the new people will figure it out, which is great, but that's not what they're saying. And for Musk to spend most of his day shitposting about this, and all these other chuckleheads jumping on board, it's discouraging. And then he says, the New York Times is warmongers, and then 2 posts later he's fucking quoting New York Times shit, and then, or not New York, the New York Times? I already deleted it. And then inside their news post, they're quoting him. What a fucking circle jerk. Who are they fooling with this? And the answer is they're fooling a lot of people. So, I just want radios back. I want radios and armor and night vision and drones. I want fun, cool shit. Fun, cool shit, and to be left alone. Like, being left alone should not be like extremist activity. You should be able to just be left alone. You want to play with radios? You want to play with, I've always wanted one of those armored shields. I thought those were cool. Like, sooner or later they're going to try to ban those and say, well, you're a civilian, you don't need an armored shield. Well, of course I don't need it. I think they're cool. I've always thought they were cool. Like, in every country has like different armored shields. I think they're all cool. Armored things are cool. Camo is cool. I like all the different patterns of camo. I like the digital one that everybody else hates. I like woodland and Marpat and ACUs, and like, they want to take all that away. It's like, you're not hurting anybody. Like, walking around in your yard, going camping in camo isn't hurting anybody. Or buying military surplus, backpack isn't hurting anybody. I wasn't in the military. But I like the cool stuff that they get. They get cool things. I think it's cool. Some of it's junk, but some of it's cool. Like, why can't we just be left alone? And I want the next 4 years spent figuring out how maybe we can have families that have a future where everyone can get left alone. And then people can figure shit out for themselves again. And you don't need, I was reading this thing, and they said the average home right now needs 4 incomes, and it's starting to look like actually even more than that. Is that a world that you want to raise your kids? And a lot of people aren't even having kids anymore, and I want kids so bad, but I don't see it happening. Like, things just keep getting progressively worse. And I think there's millions and millions of people that are seeing the same thing. When you see that houses are 500,000, 600,000, and then you're like, okay, Orange Man is going to tariff. That means, we have to import a lot of our wood to keep new houses building. Okay, that means that we stop building. That's going to unemploy all the builders, which is going to unemploy everybody else. And it just gives you a headache realizing it's like, yeah, we have a lot of wood in the US, but like we would chop it all down trying to build houses and not build enough, like, unless, we kick 30, 40 million people out and then fix those houses up. But like, I haven't seen a plan from any of them that makes any sense. Like, maybe tariffing wood coming in is not a good idea. I don't think the next 4 years are going to be that great because I haven't seen a plan yet. I don't see how we get back to good this time. Especially, like, I want all the wars to stop. That would help. Like, shit not being ludicrously expensive would help. But like, I want Musk is having all these conversations with all these people, but then the shit that they put out afterwards is a joke. I want to see like actual smart reports being written, like, let's put this 3-letter agency here. This is how much money it's going to cost. We're going to put in a requisition to move this building here. It's going to cost 200 million. It's going to cost 200 million to put a building here. We already have a building here, so we're just going to retrofit it or something. Like, and you might say to yourself, well, they're not in yet. They're not in yet. They've already had a month to figure this stuff out. And instead, he's doing a shit posting tour. And then talking about the new fucking role playing game. It's just like, dude, people are suffering. And then you joke about threatening to fire millions of people. Meanwhile, on the private side, but I forgot if I said this already, but Wells Fargo is like laying off another 1,000 people or something like that. Like, people are fucked. And there aren't any jobs to absorb the sheer ludicrous amount of people that have been getting laid off for the last several years. I know this is going to sound dumb, but Sherry's, we have this restaurant chain called Sherry's over here. They got laid off, all of them. All of the Sherry's restaurants employees got laid off with only a couple hours of notice. The people that knew that had all the names of all the people to get laid off to give it to the unemployment office just didn't fucking do it. So you're talking, I don't know, hundreds of people that just got laid off that have, I think, no way of proving to the unemployment office that they were actually employed by Sherry's and for how long, so they can claim their unemployment insurance. I've never even heard of that shit happening before. But like, those people are fucked. Where are they going to work? And you might think, well, that wasn't a career to begin with. Okay, but it was some kind of income, which means there has to be some other kind of income out there. Like, people have to have something to do. And you might say, well, if they didn't outsource so much stuff to India or H-1Bs, or people can learn to code. And it's like, man, but the problem is that everybody did learn how to code, and now there's no coding jobs. And it all AI can code for everybody now anyway. Like, we're fucked. And decentralizing DC into very strategic locations could end up really, really, really saving a lot of people that are hurting if they're smart about it. But if they're stupid about it, all it's going to do is make them look like tone deaf idiots. They're going to have billions of dollars earmarked just to build new buildings, and it's going to take forever for them to build new buildings. So that shit's not going to happen forever. So they would have to find existing buildings, and it's still going to take, I don't know, 6 months to retrofit the buildings, maybe. I mean, unless there's already offices in there, but then you're talking about fucking hundreds of thousands of people's badges and shit having to get changed, because I assume they all have some kind of badge, not to mention all the HR work. of everybody having to reassign everybody and blibbity blobbity blue. And then like that thing I read where they're like, they wouldn't divulge. We're 100,000 federal employees. Well, yeah, it's because they're all at home. So they have to still protect everybody from all this crazy doxing going on. And it's just like, man, I want to see Orange Man be successful. And he's a real estate guy. I'm sure maybe he knows of some buildings. And I think on one of them I saw he or somebody was talking about one of the Trump towers could have been used. And I know people say like nepotism, blah blah blah. But like, let's find some buildings and let's open up some new HQs, and maybe every city gets a new building. And then if people were remotely working from those from that area, they report to that building. And if someone gets hired, maybe that's the building that they show up to. Do things that aren't going to just scare the living shit out of everybody for pure troll bait, because it's only going to make them look dumb, and everybody's going to be even more upset. And again, on top of that, we're still going to be having three-way protests between all the Palestinian protesters, all of the protesters over the free penny verdict, and you're going to have all of the illegals protesting over their food and all their free shit getting taken away as the government tries in vain to try to deport them all. This is like a lot, and that's why several podcasts ago I said they're going to have to staff up. And even if they decentralize all the buildings, which I think is a good idea, they're still going to have to staff up. Like, you can get rid of some of the middle management, and you can get rid of a handful of people not doing anything, and you can get rid of some of the upper mid-level bureaucrats, but like, the US has got a lot of work to do. Like, Homeland is going to need a lot of people, you know? Like, sure, some of the, again, like, if you want to let the IRS and the ATF go, and the Department of Education and a couple other ones, like, I get that. That's still going to unemploy metric shit tons of people, you know. Some of them could reapply and work for other agencies, and depending on geographically where they live, that could work out really well. But like, these are the things that I want to see them talking about and planning about, because we've got some major civil upheaval coming. There's going to not necessarily be food shortages, but there's going to be food, like, diversity, scarcity problems. Like, there's going to be the perception of less food, even though that's kind of not really going to be the case. Like, I don't know. And, they need to go look at FEMA for sure. There's a lot of agencies they need to go look at. DOE had some funny issues with the fuel, selling some of the strategic oil reserves back to China. There's totally some things to look at. But I want to see our country back to being the greatest country in the world, period, bar none, setting the standard. But I think that means that we need to be running smarter and not trolling the shit out of everybody. I think after 4 years of Sleepy Joe, I think people want to hear a real plan, because I will again, I'll repeat this again. I think a lot of the left voted for Orange Man. They had to have, because there's no way that he would have won the popular vote and the electoral with as much as he did if the left hadn't voted for him. What he needs to do now is show them why he was the right choice. And I don't know. I think this is how they get there. But in that law that like people can't train in like 4-man groups anymore. Those like militia laws and shit. Like, all that stuff just like needs to go. But like, if you say these certain things, or if you have like this Christian flag, you're like a domestic extremist, or like Christians are extremists, and all the DEI, like, all that just needs to go. Like, Christians aren't extremists. People should be allowed to train, have modern stuff. Like, if the cartels get out of hand, all we're going to have is each other. It makes sense to train and to have modern tools because the cartels don't give a shit. So either people are going to have to pick and choose what what they want to do, or or the risk is getting hung out to dry. So, so I think I'm going to cut this one here. I want to go back through my comments again. Wolverines, thank you for the comment. Nana, I saw you post a couple of comments. I really liked your comments. One of them got deleted, but I responded in a different comment. Blocktard, I saw you. Appreciate your comment. I agree. Piersy Poo, I saw your comment on a different one. Thank you for the kind words. Piersy Poo is the best. Piersy Poo is the best. So I think I'm caught up. I've been having not only problems seeing other people's posts, I've been having problems seeing my own posts on my own channel. So I saw one of Nana's posts disappear as I was messaging, as I was responding, and one of my posts to Tuck, I think, one of my own responses to Tuck got deleted on my so if I don't message you back, if I don't shout your name out, I apologize. YouTube's censorship is absolutely insane. I probably read through my comments like 5 times a day to try to catch them, and sometimes they're there and sometimes they're not, and the held thing doesn't work. So, so if anyone's out there, I'm not deleting your stuff. I swear, I haven't had to delete anybody's posts in probably like a year because you're all just so awesome. So I appreciate you all, and I'll talk to you all into the next one. Talk to y'all in the next one. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll try to answer them as best as I can. I'm a little bit leery about answering squad-based tactics questions. But there's a lot of really good books out there that are still perfectly legal. And so I'll dig through. I think T-Rex Arms is like reprinting them all. And maybe what I can do, if those books are still if those books haven't been banned, is maybe I'll read through some of those and maybe illustrate some of those a little bit, because I don't want to be the first one thrown in the gulag. But at the same time, my joke I always say is like, well, that law technically makes being like a Walmart greeter illegal. If there's any team-based security training at all, it would make all of that illegal because they're not law enforcement. Anyway, it's insane to me. I'm going to try to figure out how to tread that line, because I was realizing when I did my, react to contact L-shaped ambush, I wanted to start talking about like vehicle counter ambush. So I'm like, technically that's 4 people, and I think 4 people is like going to be illegal. I have no idea how that law is going to be administered, and I think it goes in like any day now. So I'll have to look that up. But there's great military doctrine on squad-based tactics. And whoops, let's see if I can. Again, all for defense. For honestly, like probably 99% of you probably live in some kind of subdivision, or you're in a rural area and you need to patrol your woods or whatever for dinosaurs. So yeah, there it is. The U.S. Army Small Unit Tactics Handbook, I think, is the right one. There's also Marine Rifle Squad, the big, also known as one of the big red books. Super, 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 super affordable. The Marine, the Marine and Army official publications are like shockingly affordable. And they've got pictures so easy that a grunt fresh out of grunt school can figure them out. So, all joking aside, grab those. You'll know the official ones because they're in big ugly books. Sometimes you can get them on eBay for like almost nothing because the military, unless you live by a base, when the military gets out, usually they have a bunch of those books. They just bring them, to the surplus store and hand them in for a few bucks or something. So that's a good place to start. And I'll try to figure out what the legalese is to see if that law is going in or not. It's like, can I talk about 2-man teams? I'm pretty sure it's like 4-man. Like you can't talk about 4-man teams anymore. So I'll try to figure that out, and we'll just pretend that they're neighborhood watch. Because a 2-man team for neighborhood watch is like pretty standard. Or if it's like a husband-wife team, technically that's like a 2-man team. So, or if you got your husband and wife and like your brother, that'd be like a 3-man team. So I think that's pretty reasonable. So we'll see what I can come up with. But let me know down in the comments section if you liked my React to Contact L-shaped ambush video, what you'd like me to talk about next. And I'll do my best. All right? Bye-bye.
Here's the thing, we started our friends. It was cool, but it was all pretend. Yeah. Since you've been gone, you're dedicated, you took the time. Wasn't long till I called you mine. Yeah, since you've been gone. And all you'd ever hear me say is how I picture me with you. That's all you'd ever hear me say. But since you've been gone, I can breathe for the first time. I'm so moving on, yeah. Thanks to you, now I get what I want. Since you've been gone, how can I put it? You put me on. I even fell for that stupid love song, yeah. Since you've been gone, how come I'd never hear you say I just wanna be with you? Guess you never felt that way. But since you've been gone, I can breathe for the first time. I'm so moving on, yeah. Thanks to you, now I get what I want. Since you've been gone, you had your chance, you blew it. Out of sight, out of mind. Shut your mouth, I just can't take it. Again and again and again and again. Since you've been gone, I can breathe for the first time. I'm so moving on, yeah. Thanks to you, now I get what I want. I can breathe for the first time. Oh, I'm so moving on, yeah. Thanks to you, now I get. You should know. Now and then, I get what I want. Since you've been gone. Since you've been gone. Since you've been gone.